work in television, I can imagine so many people feel this way. Whether you work in television or not, you have your work version of yourself, and then you have your at-home version of yourself. And so that was interesting because I had spent so much of my life keeping those two completely separate, meshing the two of them together. And it was a little bit hard, especially when you're asked more about, you as a person. I've only ever been interviewed to ask about weather or climate or science-based question. And here people were asking me about more of my personal life. So that is it's funny. Those are easier questions to answer because everybody knows what their favorite color is, their favorite type of food, even, fun questions like that. They're easier to answer, but it's also more difficult because you're not used to answering stuff like that.
This is an On-Cam Ready production. I'm Jamie Maglietta. Thank you so much for listening to this on your podcasting platform of choice or watching this on YouTube. I am a 20-year television news veteran with experience across 24/7 cable news, as well as in a few local markets and BET. I come to this conversation with the mission to help you see your full potential and show up on camera. I want you to go from unknown to known, and I am tapping all my resources to help guide you so you have everything you need to leverage your expertise and transform your thought leadership into content. I'll be interviewing on-camera personalities to help better understand what it takes to show up on camera. We'll discuss mindset, personal hurdles, and then also just personal beliefs and challenges. Being an entrepreneur these days means you should be on camera. Being an author means you should be on camera because you need to have a community. And then when I say a community, I mean like your digital audience needs to be engaged so that when you go and pitch that book to the press sees your online presence and says, score. This person is ready for television or this podcast or my magazine article. If you're an expert within your field and you truly believe that you have what it takes to start showing up on camera and securing press, then stop letting all those visibility blockers stop you. It's time for a mindset shift, and I hope the conversations on this podcast help inspire you. Do check out the YouTube channel if you're listening on your podcasting platform of choice, because there I offer tutorials. I break down YouTube podcasts and help you think like a producer so you know what it takes to really produce long-form content. I'm also there providing daily pieces of inspiration that I may start offering on this podcast too. I also have a Substack. I'll have a link in the description. I hope you find me there. I do offer Substack Lives that I'm going to be breaking down into podcast conversations. However, if you join my course, which is coming out, I truly believe you need to select your platforms and only focus on the ones where your audience is. After leaving my television news job, I didn't know who I was. I mean, even as I record this, I still don't know who I am anymore. It was easy before. I could just say I'm a CNN producer. I produce television news. Now, I'm what? A motivator? Inspirational speaker? I'm not really a coach, but I guess I am. Clarity is important. It helps with your messaging completely. But as I'm on that journey, I couldn't stop from producing this podcast until my clear vision of who I want to be when I grow up was ironed out. All I know is that I am on a mission to serve. And I may not be able to identify myself as a producer anymore, but I'm producing a heck of a lot of content. So on LinkedIn, I call myself a new media strategist because with clients, when I do select clients, I do work on that huge, big new media strategy. I am currently focusing on you. I'm packaging up everything I know to help you. If this resonates, I do hope you will leave a review and subscribe to this YouTube channel, podcast, or follow me on your podcasting platform of choice. Today's guest is known as a meteorologist, but she's becoming known as a romance novelist. During COVID, she discovered her voice and wrote not one, but 4 romance novels. Now, when I first recorded this conversation, I hadn't read the books yet. Now that I'm on book 3, I have to say, it's more of a suspense, like, mystery book with some romance versus a Bridgerton romance novel. But you do get your fill if you're into romance. I love the way she writes. Today we're talking with Allison Bettes. Although you may know her as Allison Chinchar on CNN, here's a short clip, just in case you need a refresher.
Well, Allison, I have to ask you about your sweater.
It's Cloud Appreciation Day today. Happy Cloud Appreciation Day for those who
I had no idea. But it's perfect for that. Happy Cloud Appreciation Day to you. We'll see you next hour. Thank you.
Now, they're mostly suspense and thriller books, but they are romance, so they have a happy ending. That was
Sure.
always my thing was I like reading books
Yes.
with happy endings. So that's where this series particular comes from. So
Oh.
I'm very excited about it.
Very cool.
So let me just say that in both of those clips, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that she actually looks different on CNN than she looks on 11 Alive in Atlanta for her television interview. What I like about what she's doing is she essentially has 2 personas, her author with the naturally curly hair and the CNN anchor, sleek hair, polished look. I think it's really smart, and we do talk about that in this conversation. We also get into why she actually didn't see herself as an on-camera personality. And we go over and provide some tips on how you can get over whatever hurdles you have that are stopping you from showing up on camera. We dig into the mindset that you need to become on-cam ready. You know, just this podcast alone has been inspiring me and filling my heart because I truly believe that you can gain so much from those that have done it already. And since leaving CNN full time, the one thing people constantly ask me is, how do I show up on camera? I can't show up on social media. I don't even know how to talk to the camera. I don't know how to pitch myself or appear as a podcast guest, but I have so much to say. These conversations will help you. And I'll also offer bonus episodes where I talk to you in my television producer voice. Because as the producer, I was the calm in the room, the calm voice in the anchor's ear, and I will do that for you. So if you ever need just a piece of wisdom or someone to push you to do what you need to do and show up, come back to this podcast and listen to the bonuses. All right, I've said enough. Now let's get to this conversation. Again, I recorded this before reading her books, and I have to say, I absolutely love them. I'm on book 3. Sorry, I got a little excited. And I'll put a link in the description so you can get your copies. Thank you so much for being a part of my journey, and I hope you find your way from going. Thank you so much for being a part of my journey, and I hope what I have to offer helps you along yours. Here's my conversation with Allison Bettes.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this because I think hopefully there are a lot of things that I can teach people or tell people about my life that will then help them with whatever it is their goals may end up being.
Yeah. So why don't you take us behind the scenes a little bit? Look back at who Allison was in college when you're like, hey, I want to be a meteorologist. What was it that drove you to be such a public facing personality?
Yeah, so this is the part that I think always confuses people or maybe just shocks them a little bit. But I never wanted to go into television. I always knew I'd be a
Oh,
meteorologist. I had the passion for science from the very beginning, but I am deathly afraid of public speaking. And so you think about being in front of the camera, that involved, being in front of people. It was by default. We had a class where you could take in school to learn how to do the on camera stuff, but thought it would be an easy A. So I
mhm.
figured I would take the class. And I honestly ended up liking doing the television side more than I ever thought I would. Even being in front of people, it got easier. I'm not going to lie, my hands were shaking those first couple times, as I imagine it would be for many people, but it does get easy over time. And I had wonderful professors and also just other people who had done the program that would give you tips and tricks of how to make it a little bit easier. I graduated college, got a job at a local TV station in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That was my very first TV job there. And then from there, moved on to Nashville. And then from Nashville, I got a job at a TV station in Atlanta. And I've been in Atlanta now for more than a decade. I've worked at several different stations. I worked at local TV, then to the Weather Channel, and then to CNN, where I've been for the last 10 years. So quite a ride, especially given that it's not where I originally thought I would end up.
It is like your journey to me is so interesting because when I talk to people about, showing up on camera, a lot of them will say, I have so much to offer, but I really don't know how to be myself on camera. Is so relatable because so many people have that expertise that you had in weather sciences, and you started to find your path on how to share that on camera. When you started out, did you find like preparation helped most, or what was it that would just get you to say, you know what, I'm going on camera, I got this?
It's a little bit of both. I can never go in blind. I can't do that. And I know there are some people that can, but I can't. I always felt like I had to have a general sense of what I was going to do. So we don't use PowerPoint for our weather presentation, but I was told, think of it like a PowerPoint presentation because you have graphics. You have something that you would be standing in front of that you could use, you could use with your hands, especially people who talk with their hands a lot. It gives you something for that movement so that you don't have to worry about, having your hands be everywhere when you're talking. It gives them a purpose, but it also gives you a purpose. It reminds you of flow, just like a PowerPoint would. It tells you the order in which your conversation is supposed to go. But I also understand that sometimes you don't have that. You don't always have those same graphics. So to people who don't have the luxury of having a PowerPoint in front of you, just remind yourself of an order. And yes, practice ahead of time. A lot of times you can have index cards. So I would, at least mark the topics so I knew the order in which I was supposed to do them. But the best advice I ever got from people was pretend the people you're talking to are your family and your friends, because that not only helps you feel a bit more at ease, because it's always easier to talk to your family and friends, but the manner in which you speak, especially when it comes to science or for anyone who is in a medical field or engineering where it's very technical. If you're speaking to your family and friends who do not have degrees in that, you tend to bring it down to a level where other people can understand, which makes it much easier for people listening to you or watching you to really grasp not only the expertise, but in a way that they can understand. So I have found over the years that piece of advice was really the best thing is when you're talking, pretend you're talking to family and friends, especially maybe say like a grandma or a grandpa who really does not have that level of expertise that you do. And you've really got to bring it down to their level.
I started out, I was on camera in high school. I was a TV anchor, that morning show. It was local access, right? So I had that interest. But the more I showed up on camera, the more I wanted to be behind the lens. I didn't want to have to put on makeup and dress nice. And I didn't really want to have to perform every morning for the morning news. It just started to be like, oh, do I really want that? And I went the path of being a producer. When I got out of school, I wound up finding myself wanting to be on air again because I was at Fox News Channel. And, I got the chance to be on camera. And I think, having had that experience in theater and on stages, I had the confidence. But I remember those live interviews on camera and I'm like, oh my goodness. All of a sudden, you're sweating. You're like, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid I'm going to forget something, right? Nothing came out well. So when you are putting together a live broadcast, do you write out your scripts? Do you how do you prepare to go on camera for your 1 minute hit on the weather?
Yeah, so that's one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is weather is one of the few parts of the newscast that's not scripted. We don't look into the camera and see our script. It's very much like giving a presentation live in an audience. We don't have that. Now, again, you can maybe memorize certain things or practice what you're going to say ahead of time, but there's no script to read much on the fly, for lack of better terms, when you're doing it. I personally thrive in an environment like that, but it's taken time. If I go back and I look at my videos of, say, my first job in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I mean, I cringe looking at how I would have explained things or how I would have presented things because I've learned, and obviously the more practice makes better. But the other thing you also have to understand too is you are your own worst critic. You are going to see things in yourself that you're like, oh, did I say that? Or, oh, that doesn't sound right. Other people don't. So remember that you are always going to be more critical of yourself, mostly because you know what you could have done differently. You will always say, oh, I should have said this, or if only I had said it this way. But you have to remember that maybe you could have said it better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that how you said it was bad. And viewers, especially if it's not a topic of their expertise, they won't know any different. They see you as an expert in what you're talking about, very fluent. You talk very well. I enjoyed that presentation, even if you may sit there and think to yourself, that was not as good as it could have been.
I just want to remind everybody that she's also a romance novelist. So not only did she find her voice once, she's finding her voice again in a different way. So we're going to make sure that we talk about the book and how she shows up on camera as the author, in addition to as the meteorologist. But before we do, I just wanted to say, if you're enjoying this conversation, be sure to subscribe to the channel or like this episode. All right, so let me just play Libby's question, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say, Allison, on the other side.
Hello, my name is Libby Birch Forster. I live in North Atlanta. I am a senior loan officer with Johns Creek Mortgage. I would love to know how on-camera personalities juggle their passions while living a very public life. And I would also like to know how someone like myself can feel more confident and comfortable in front of the camera.
So go for it. What do you think?
Yeah, so let's tackle the first question. How do you juggle multiple things at a time? Maybe say your job, but also your passions. Yes, so my day job as a meteorologist, I am also a science writer. So I have a little bit of a writing background there. But writing novels is totally different. First off, it's fiction. I can take liberties on making a few things up for the books that, you can't necessarily do with your day job. But for me, it was just finding time to set apart for that kind of fun hobby. But I imagine it's just like anybody else. If you want to go have lunch with your girlfriends or you want to just go see a movie and relax, you make time for it. This hobby is a little bit easier because it can be done from the comfort of my own home. I don't actually have to leave. And a lot of times that's what I would do is, after I would put my son to bed, I would maybe sit in the kitchen and just write a little bit. Or maybe I, got up early one morning and I would sit in bed. My laptop would be there. I could pull it aside and just start writing a little bit. The thing is, because I started these books so many years ago, it's taken time to write them. I am sure authors who are full-time authors can write a book much faster than I can because it's their full-time job. But I think the thing is, even if you only take 30 minutes out of your day, an hour out of your day to do something fun for yourself, it's still worth it, even if it's just a short period of time. For me, it's what reset me throughout the day, was being able to have that fun hobby. I think it's just trying to make the time. And look, there are days I simply do not have time. Either my day job takes up too much time or I'm too busy hustling between child's activities, things like that. It is what it is. But the next day, you do the best you can and make time for it. At that point, I think it also gives me something to look forward to because I know I didn't get to do it today, but I'll get to do it tomorrow. And her second question, remind me again.
Libby was asking how she should be showing up or how she could start showing up on camera as her authentic self, or some tips on that.
Hello, my name is Libby Birch Forster. I live in North Atlanta. I am a senior loan officer with Johns Creek Mortgage. I would love to know how on-camera personalities juggle their passions while living a very public life.
Yeah,
I'd also like to know how someone like myself can feel more confident and comfortable in front of the camera.
The confidence part kind of goes in line with what we said earlier. Just imagining it's your friends and your family that you're talking to, because automatically people just feel more comfortable when doing that. But the other side to that is practice, because the more you do it, it's just like anything. You're going to feel more comfortable after you do it. And I don't even necessarily mean doing lots of TV interviews or doing lots of podcast interviews. I mean, even if it's just literally practicing in front of your mirror. The key thing is, though, to record yourself. Practicing in front of a mirror, you can't go back and watch yourself. So even if it's simply just setting up your phone in front of your bathroom or in your office and recording yourself doing the interview, people often don't want to stop and hit the stop button and start over, but it forces you to work through maybe mistakes or slip ups that you would say. If I were talking to you about something and I would say, oh yeah, and then the moon, it forces you to just kind of pick up from where you are because you realize you're being recorded. If you're not doing that, you don't think on the fly, and you'll have to be able to do that because no matter how many times you practice, everybody messes up at some point. I've messed up on air before. It happens. You work through it, you move on. And for the most part, a lot of times people who are watching don't even notice the slip ups, especially if you correct it quick enough. But that's the best advice is practice, but practice in front of something you can actually record. Not only does it help make you flow better, but you can also go back then and watch it and see for yourself what things you may have done differently.
That's great. Those are great tips. Allison and I were also, getting our rooms set up before we started, trying to figure out your background, making sure you are lit well, making sure you have everything lined up so that you feel that you look as good as possible. That'll also help you with confidence. Confidence is also a big thing that you must have truly had and embraced when you decided to write 4 romance novels. So I want to take us back to COVID before we get into that, because, COVID was a tough time, especially for us in the news. We were, I guess it was called like emergency people. Like we had to be on location, right? It's like you need to work. So I was in the office while a lot of people went home, and you were one of those that got to do your job from home, right? So tell us, like, did you have a computer that you used for the graphics? Like, there was a whole big thing. I'm sure you're able to tell, but if not, don't. But if you can, please let us know what it was like during that time that led to you writing these books.
Yeah, so in the beginning, we didn't know. We had suspected early on. I'm talking at the end of March when the company first started saying, okay, like, got to start making preparations. Maybe we'll do this. We had a brief scare that someone in our department may have had COVID. So that instantly, it was like, everybody's home. That's it. Everybody's home. So we were scrambling in the beginning of trying to figure out how to even do our jobs from home. We hadn't really planned on it. So in my spare bedroom, I had a giant green piece of fabric that was hung up on my wall. I mean, I'm talking tacks. This was not pretty.
I want a photo.
Like literally push pins and tacks, holding this piece of green fabric up against the wall. And I shot it with my iPhone. I had an iPhone. That's what I shot on. And I would have my computer in front of me, which is where I would have my graphics. And the director who's working back at CNN in the building would just go back and forth of taking my graphics full screen or taking me. Then, over time, we started to get a little fancier and we could put the graphics behind me. It was definitely a change because since I was no longer even physically going into work, there were literally weeks on end where I would only leave my house to go to the mailbox or go for a walk in my neighborhood. Or I'm fortunate enough I have a park that's just down the street from me. So we maybe hop in the car and go to the park. But that was about it. You didn't really leave the house. But in turn, that gave me a lot of extra time on my hands. And that turned into writing novel. Even though it was never intended to be that way, it was more just cathartic of just wanting to just write thoughts down. I would have ideas of, oh, what if I wrote, like about this and a story about this, and just started writing them all down, and then finished one book that turned into 2 and then 3 and then 4. And it's finally at that point, I think my husband was like, oh my God, please just publish them. So yes, it was definitely an interesting journey. I had the background from having worked in TV and news of how to put things out there, because I will admit that is the toughest part of publishing a book is the marketing side. And I don't have a lot of experience of marketing, but I use a lot of the skills that I had of being on camera and working in TV to kind of transition that to helping me with marketing. It made it very easy. I know authors who, doing this podcast I'm doing now, they would be terrified to do something like this. Or
Yeah.
even sometimes doing an interview for a magazine where it's not on camera, but you still have to answer questions over the phone. Those things scare people. And I understand that. I can empathize with that. But I certainly think that has helped me definitely get into the author side of things, having that experience of doing those kind of things.
Author
Yeah.
side of things right here, guys, if you're watching. 4 books. So I got to ask, like, was there some type of sexual energy going on at home that led to some romance books? Like, what was going on during COVID?
You can yell. I mean, I want to be honest, they're fiction. I mean, it's also a science book. So there's like murder and plot. So I'm very clear I'm not murdered anyway, to get experience for the books. But yes, my husband likes to say that, he was a willing victim to try out things for the book. He of course likes to add that in. It's funny. So the books are based here in Atlanta. It's about a security company and, some of the missions that they would be on working for a private security company and then also having to find their love interest along the way. There are so many characters in those books that are based for me off of real people, not to the point of entirety, but, certain aspects of each person. There's a bartender character in the very first book, her name is Tammy, but she's based off my best friend, Nikki. It's, there's aspects of it, but not necessarily in how she looks or what she does. My friend Nikki's never been a bartender. It's more just the personalities of them and those kind of things, like her dry-witted sense of humor. So yes, there are aspects of real life that go into those books, but it was also just fun to kind of make a lot of things up as I go along.
To binge on love, and now you're working on another character line or another version. Like, tell us what's next.
Yeah, so I've already started writing because the first 4 books are done, just in various stages of editing and publishing, but I've started working on the next series. And this is where, people always say, like, write what you know. And I've got to be honest, I really didn't do that for the first series. I've never worked for a private security firm. That was more just fun. This next series, all of the female characters that will be the leads all have STEM jobs. So there's a meteorologist, there's forensic scientist, marine biologist. They're all very science jobs. So that pulls from, my other day job while also kind of blending it in with my side job. So this is going to be a fun journey for me, kind of meshing the two together.
Oh, I love that. It's blending your 2 voices that you're embracing. So tell us, when you had to show up as a author for the first time on TV, did you have any hesitations or any thoughts, or anything hold you back that you were
I
like,
think the
"Oh,
difference there was, as you pointed out in the very beginning of this podcast, the look. Because how I look on television is different. I'm wearing contacts right now because I'm blind as a bat, naturally.
same."
I do not do my own hair and makeup. I should never be allowed to do my own hair and makeup. We have a professional team that does this, but this is what we refer to as the TV look. It's more polished, done very well. When I went to the TV interview for my book, I tried to just be more myself. I have naturally curly hair. And I just let it go that day. I thought, you know what, let's do it. And when I'm not working on TV, I often just wear my glasses. My contacts after a while will irritate me, so I just wear my glasses. That for me was what made it feel and even look different too, because it was more the real me. But when you work in television, I can imagine so many people feel this way. Whether you work in television or not, you have your work version of yourself, and then you have your at-home version of yourself. And so that was interesting because I had spent so much of my life keeping those two completely separate to now meshing the two of them together. And that was a little bit hard, especially when you're asked more about, you as a person. I've never been asked that before. I've only ever been interviewed to ask about weather or climate or science-based questions. And here people were asking me about more of my personal life. It's funny. Those are easier questions to answer because everybody knows what their favorite color is, their favorite type of food, even fun questions like that. They're easier to answer, but it's also more difficult because you're not used to answering stuff like that. I would imagine if you're a banker, that you work in finance, and then somebody suddenly asks you, like, where is your favorite place to go on vacation? It's an easy question to answer. You probably know, but you've never been asked that in a business setting before. So that definitely took some getting used to of being interviewed, but having the line of questions be completely different than anything I had ever been asked before.
Yeah. And to prepare for it. I've spoken to other people who are on TV still, and now they're in this new space of having to talk about themselves and their book or their film project. And they're like, oh my goodness, how do I keep it to time? I have so much I want to say. I'm so passionate about this. And, it is hard. And I always say, write it out, speak it out, and then deliver it. When you decided to launch these books, I remember you saying you had a friend who said, just do it. When you had to rip that Band-Aid off, like what was that like to kind of commit to this second person, this second voice of yours?
It is. It's very nerve-wracking. I imagine it's the same for anybody who would ever do like a career change later in their life. You hear about that. People in their 30s and 40s say, you know what, I don't want to work in marketing anymore. I want to go to nursing school. You're doing a complete 180 when it comes to jobs. This is a little bit different because I still kept my day job, but you're entering a realm that you've never been part of before. I mean, again, learned from the ground up. I was very fortunate to have two friends who are also authors. One was nonfiction books, so it's slightly different. The other is fiction, but more in the fantasy realm. So I didn't have anybody that was specifically in my genre, which in terms of books, that does make a difference. But I still had friends in the business that could help me with things. And I truly mean this when I say this, I would not be where I am in that space without having those people there. But, this is what social media and websites like LinkedIn and things like that are for. Reach out. There are so many people like myself that had help along the way that are willing and wanting to, pay it forward to other people. I finally started reaching out to people who were in my genre and said, hey, I see you've had a couple more books. I have questions. I have yet to meet someone who was not willing to help. So whether that's you are thinking of publishing a book or you are thinking of switching careers and doing something different, reach out. Take advantage of the fact that social media and LinkedIn can connect you to people you would never, ever know of otherwise. Take advantage of that because they'll not only be able to answer your questions, but maybe you want to answer some of theirs. It's funny. I would interview these people or ask these people questions only for them to turn and ask me things. And actually, it made me feel good to be able to, answer one question for the 50 that they would answer for me. So yes, I would say, again, take advantage of that. I know social media can be scary for many people, especially if you're not on it a lot, but it really is a fantastic tool to use.
And that's how I found out she was also an author, guys. Social media. Any last thoughts you have before we wrap?
I think the thing that I would just say to people is if there's part of you that wants to do this, whether that is go do a TV interview, switch careers, any of this stuff, just do it. If it's in the back of your mind, if you find yourself thinking about it more and more, and I don't mean like once a year, I mean a couple times a week, you were thinking, okay, maybe it's time to pull the trigger. Just do it. Because if you don't, you're always going to sit there and wonder, what if? And it's always better to just try. I've said to my husband before, if these books don't take me anywhere, if this is all that ever happened and this is all it ever becomes and I don't become a best-selling author, it's okay. Because for the 100 people that read my books, they enjoyed it. And I gave them, just a couple of days of happiness of enjoying a book and taking them out of the real world for a very short period of time. So for me, it was still totally worth it. And you don't know that your passion may do the same for somebody else.
Oh, I love it. Guys, the book, there'll be a link in the description. It goes to my storefront. You can get her book there on Amazon. Thank you so much. I'm really glad we could have this conversation. And for everyone who's watching, remember, if you loved this episode, be sure to leave a review, subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, and I'll see you guys online. Oh, before we go, there's also a Substack. You can read all about her on my Substack. So that link will be in the description along with that discount on Riverside. All right. Thanks again, guys. See ya.